Welcome to another weekly featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, James Moffat, where he will gracefully take our featured guest on a personal and business journey and stories that will inspire, educate, and engage you.
Welcome to another featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, myself, James Moffat. Today we have our 108th guest. Now I'm going to attempt to pronounce your name because I know you've given me the pronouns. Right? So Casey Garrard. Yeah? Okay. You're our 108th guest, so welcome to the show. And we are with a live audience as well. And if anyone that's watching the kind of the replay, then yeah, feel free to reach out also to Casey, who will provide her contact details and everything at the end of the show, and we'll put them in the notes. So let's get going. So Casey, we're going to take you down memory lane, and we're going to find out a bit more about you. And before we get into your business and what you're doing now, a bit more about your childhood, your background, where you grew up. And we're just going to steer the story. If you've got anything memorable that you want to share with us, then feel free to do that as well. Or if there's any pivotal points in your life that you want to share. I mean, in some cases, there could be many, but at least a lot of audience or a lot of the guests definitely have one. So the floor is yours. So I want you to enjoy yourself, have fun, reach out and ask questions as well. And if the audience want to ask as well, this is an opportunity they can raise their hand and jump in and ask you a question. So without further ado, Casey, right, welcome.
Thank you, James. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Yes, beautiful. All right.
Right, so Casey, let's just start off. Right, so where are you living now? And where are you originally from?
Currently, I'm living in Marin County, California, which is just north of San Francisco. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is the opposite coast, on the East Coast.
Excellent. And have you moved around a lot since you were a child?
No, I grew up in Pennsylvania and I came out to school in California, and there I stayed.
All right. It wasn't homeschooling, was it?
No.
I'm just asking that because Beth is a homeschool teacher, right? Right. But anyway, are you far from each other, Beth? When you find your unmute button.
Sorry, I tried the spacebar thing and it didn't work. I'm just south of San Francisco in San Jose. I was just going to message her that information.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, that's not far at all.
Yeah, and I'm originally from Southern California, so I've been in the area my whole life.
Right.
Beautiful.
Okay, so just tease us with, which we're going to come on to shortly. So just tease us a little bit. You have your own business, and the name of your business is, well.
Yes, I have two. One is called the Best Practices Healing Collective, and the other is Microdosing for Healing. They're both virtually based platforms that I launched. One launched about a year ago and one launched 2 years ago, but I've been an entrepreneur and self-employed since I have been an adult. So I've had businesses since I was 21 was my last job.
All right. So a couple of years then.
Yes. Quite a while.
All right. Okay. So yeah, we'll come to that in a minute, but I'm particularly interested in, I mean, I've just been on your website actually, and I've downloaded their what was it called? The microdosing for healing.
101. Yep.
Right, so I'm looking forward to reading through that later. Right. But before we get to your business, let's just take you back to your childhood. So growing up, have you got any siblings?
I do. Yep. I have two sisters.
All right. Oh. So that must have been tough for your parents. 3 girls in the family?
Well, I have one sister that I grew up with. I have a younger sister. And then I have another sister that was a surprise sister that we found each other a couple years ago.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought you were going to say I found under the bushes or something.
No. No.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we have 3 kids, but we have my eldest son is 9, and then we have twins, a boy and a girl, and they're 6. And yeah, that's tough.
I believe you.
So growing up in the family, then what kind of things were you interested in as a child?
Always nature and animals. I think were my two great loves when I was a child. Yeah, any minute I could be outside, I was, and I could not get enough of animals. Learning about animals, keeping animals, having imaginary friends that were animals. So that's nature, and the natural world has always been a big part of my life.
Yeah, it's quite ironic because every guest I ask the same question, and I would say 99% of them say the same thing. So
Yes.
we all naturally love the outdoors, we love nature, and we love animals. But if you look at typically your life and your day-to-day business, you're probably far from that.
Yes.
Probably stuck in an office or working from home, don't get out in the nature and don't see the animals. So yeah, that kind of needs to change. So growing up, then you played a lot outside, and I mean, what type of activities and things did you do?
Just, as you do as a kid, you make things up. In a lot of ways, we're most creative when we're children, because we don't have a lot of, our identity isn't fixed yet. So we are super creative and make things up. So my early childhood was just a lot of imagination, spent outdoors building things, creating things. And then later, as I got older, I got really into sports. So I played a lot of sports, and traveled for sports as well as ballet.
So what type
So,
of sports then?
oh gosh, lots. I ran year round track, cross country, basketball, field hockey, and ballet.
And ballet.
Mhm.
Ah, there's boy and doing the sports. So sports, I mean, were a main part of your life as well. I mean, you enjoyed sports, you pretty good at sports.
I loved sports. They too were a big, big part of my life. And I didn't realize until I became an adult, really fundamental to running a business. Very, very much so. Equal to any schooling that I've done, I learned aspects of running a business, playing team sports for sure, and having many coaches and mentors.
Okay. So do you think kind of the sports led you into that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, or do you think you always had that, or was that something that developed later?
I think I always had it, but I didn't grow up in families of entrepreneurs. Like a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners that you meet that started young, they had parents who were entrepreneurs and small business owners. And so you grow up with that reality and that lifestyle. It's normal, natural. I did not have that. None of my immediate family were entrepreneurs. So I really had to kind of find that, just by accident, serendipitously.
All right. No, I like rather serendipity rather than coincidental or accident. It's meant to happen. So just out of curiosity, do you play any instruments?
No.
All right. No, I asked that because a lot of the guests they do, and then they say, "Do you want to hear?" And then they start playing instruments, which is great because it's a surprise because they never mentioned that kind of in the questionnaire that I sent out. So, okay, so with your schooling, typically, what type of schooling did you do? And when you moved, did you move when you were older, or was it the family move to where you are now?
No, I moved to California when I was 19, and kind of my cover story was that I was going for college, but I kind of knew that I wanted to be on the West Coast. I was just drawn here intuitively. Um, it's easier to just say you're going for college, though. That's a more acceptable answer. So I studied in school. I studied pre-med and literature and psychology.
Wow. What type of technology?
Psychology.
Oh, psychology. I think so.
Psychology, yes.
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. There's a big difference there, as you said, technology, psychology. Okay.
hmm
Right.
hmm
And that was something that you wanted to do, that's kind of led you on that path.
I grew up wanting to be a doctor. I thought I would be a doctor. I studied, I love science. I loved people. I loved human consciousness and
Oh,
understanding. I was always fascinated with, I lost my dad when I was 7. And that was a really formative moment where I spent a lot of time studying psychology and spirituality and religion, like trying to make sense of that intellectually for many, many years. So
okay.
studying psychology, studying human beings, how we are, how we think, has always been really, really fascinating to me.
But did you say that started young then? Was that triggered by the loss of your father?
For in hindsight, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, but you hadn't, I mean, grown up as a child, given any kind of second thought to that. It wasn't until kind of something monumental happened that made you think there's more to kind of the human being than just existing.
hmm hmm Yeah.
Right. And then with the studies and everything, did you kind of find the answers you may have been looking for?
Um, to some extent, it's funny, I was just writing about this the other day, very recently. Um, I studied, as much as you could understand something from books and knowledge, right? And so studying psychology and wanting to be a doctor, I thought I would go into psychiatry or neurology. Um, but I could never kind of get to peace, a deeper peace with it. It was just all mental knowledge of mental understanding. And then I went into the healing arts. I've had a 27-year career now in the 27-year career now in the healing arts, and studied lots and lots of different modalities. And it's really the embodied experience of growth and healing that has led me to a deeper understanding of
Wow.
that I couldn't, and I don't know that anyone can really access that through kind of our Western style academic intellectual knowledge.
Yeah. Well, there's some good people here in the audience that who definitely share a lot of what you've got in common, particularly when it comes to kind of the spirituality about finding more meaning in your life and digging deeper into kind of the things that you don't get taught at school.
Yes. Yeah.
So
it's a really exciting for people who are in the healing arts or wellness or nutrition. It's, when I talk to other healing artists that have been in the field for a long time, a lot of us feel like we've been working for this moment our whole careers, when people are waking up to how disconnected we are from nature, how far away from ourselves we are, how the basic things of human connection with each other and with what we're putting in our bodies are fundamental. And we've gotten so far away. And it's a beautiful moment when people are waking up to that all around the world.
yeah, I completely agree. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we do this show as well, just to get other people's point of view and understanding on that. Because if you look at the world as it is at the moment, I mean, there's too much negativity, and without finger point on any one particular thing, it's not in the well-being and quality of life of humanity of what we deserve. And when you come across people that see it in a different way and really want to make a difference and reconnect us back to nature and ourselves, then it's kind of a breath of fresh air, because that's the type of people I'm looking for as well. And yeah, and having people like that on this show today is great. But I mean, you could also go back and listen to some of the recordings and connect with some of the others. So this is also about connecting people, because they've come on the show because they've got an interest in you and what you do. And I'm sure at least one of the takeaways are you're going to network with at least this audience, if not a wider one that follows. So you said 27 years. So 27 years, was a combination of study and working for different companies and things?
Yeah, this is the serendipitous part that comes in. So I had completed school and I was figuring out where I wanted to go to grad school and what I wanted to do. And did I want to go to medical school or did I want to take some time? And so in that interim, I had really fallen in love with Big Sur and Esalen. The California folks probably are familiar. It's human development, human dedicated to human potential. It's been around since the 60s. And where I was going to school, it wasn't that far away. And so I was very, very fortunate to visit there and begin doing bodywork and massage therapy. And that serendipitously became what I thought would be just a fun hobby. It became my career and my path and really the foundation for everything that was to come. So I would never have guessed that I would have become a massage therapist. You had asked me as a child, but it was just aligned from the start. And now I'm very, very grateful that I found it very early in my life, and it has been the foundation for everything else that I built since then. So I started working, I guess I was 20, 21, working at a studio, a massage therapy studio. And I was doing some massage, just starting doing that, but I was kind of running, assisting, managing it. And I I left because I found out that I was being paid about half of what the gentleman that I worked with, that I was actually doing a much better job than him running the place. He was being paid almost double what I was being paid. And when I asked why that was, it was because he had a child to support and I didn't. So that moment I left, I started my own private practice then, and I've not had a job since then.
You didn't rush out and get a child.
No.
You could borrow one and say, look, I've got a child now. Do I get the same salary?
Right. And negotiated. Right.
Coming back 9 months later.
Right. Right.
Exactly. So that was kind of a pivot point, because I mean, there's also about fairness at work and being treated the same. And if you're doing the same job, it doesn't really matter what is behind that on the other side. It's the job that you're doing.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway,
yeah. And it very much informed when I became a boss later and I was managing and hiring people. I was, every experience and challenge that we go through, I appreciate now and I embrace as gifts, because it's always, it's like 5-10 years later, you're like, oh, okay, that's why I was given that lesson. Is it made me very, very hyper aware for equity and fairness among my teams of who was being paid what and why, and always calling myself out when I was doing things for the wrong reasons.
So you're a fair boss.
I hope so. I hope so.
But now, do you employ people or do you do things on your own?
So prior to COVID, I had 4 healing art studios. So we did everything from meditation to yoga to bodywork, all kinds of things. And we had locations in 2 counties in Northern California. And we had a big team then. So when we went into the pandemic, we had a team of 84 people.
Wow.
And so, yes. And so unfortunately, I lost all of the studios in the pandemic. We were closed for a very long time in California. So had we been open in other states, I think we would have made it through. But in California, we were, closed over a year, mandated, and I still had rent to pay and all the expenses that go along. So it was unfortunate, but it forced me to pivot and create the businesses that I have now that I love so much. So it's...
Okay, so let's talk about the businesses that you have now. So they're both run in parallel and you put the same effort into both, or there's one that you favor more than the other one?
I love them them both. All my businesses are babies. So yes, I love them both a lot. And they nourish like both two things that I'm really, really passionate about. I love working directly with people on their healing as individuals and in groups. And then the other platform, I love coaching and mentoring and supporting other healing artists, especially right now, because there's so many people who are really coming into the field, either are really drawn and called to it. Some people who are in corporate jobs want to leave corporate and get into the healing arts. A lot of people from different backgrounds. And so I love supporting healing artists as we kind of create these new paradigms.
Yeah, I personally see that there's going to be much more help needed in the coming year, because
Yes.
there's going to be lots of revelations coming out, but also there's lots of people that, I started to discover that there's more to it than just working necessarily for a corporate job, and they want to be more independent and make their own choices and basically map out their journey rather than someone else's journey. And so I see massive changes happening, but there's going to be lots of people not knowing where to start.
Yes.
And this is the biggest challenge. It'll be then the fear, right? I don't necessarily want to be where I am now in the corporate world, but I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to do it if I knew what to do. Right.
So, well said. It's so true. Yeah. Especially the longer, I always talk when I coach younger people, and they're so nervous, and they actually have an advantage because they don't know any different. Like they're stepping into entrepreneurship very young, very early. I think it's actually much harder when you've been in a corporate job for 30 years to then move into entrepreneurship. It's such a different experience. That I think people need even more support in that process to moving into that, where you're literally designing your life every day.
I asked myself there's kind of three fundamental questions, although there's more questions, but three fundamental ones. And at some point in your childhood, you ask, what will I be when I grow up? Right? And I mean, you might just say, like Boyan, you would say, I want to be a spaceman, right? So we'll all have these ideas, and most of the time it doesn't materialize. It's just an idea. It's just like, who's my superhero, whatever, and that's what I want to be when I grow up, or footballer or whatever. But then when you do go through your education, then you go to the corporate world, typically, and you've been there many years, like as you said, it could be up to 30 plus years. And then at some point, you could ask a question again. And the second question would be, what's it all about? Because your life is then, you feel it's just an existence rather than anything meaningful and purpose-driven, that something that you really want to do. But the biggest problem is you don't know what you want to do most of the time. And then the last time that you'll ask is when you've retired, you've got away from that corporate job, you've got away from those bad bosses and that toxic environment, and then you've retired, and then you ask yourself, what's next? And there's never a right time or a wrong time, because people say, well, I'm too old to change, or they say I'm too young, I haven't experienced life yet. They'll always think of an excuse or a cliche. Oh yeah, you're too old for that. I mean, I remember always being too young to go to the pub, right? And now I'm at that age, I'm too old to have a job, right? Once you get over a certain age, nobody's interested anymore. You're on the scrap heap. And I think, well, I'm always dictated by what others think. Maybe it's time that I do my own thing, and then I answer to myself. So definitely, I think that's happening now, and there's going to be a big demand for it. So tell us a bit more about these jobs, and particularly the one I'm interested in is as I said, the magic, not the magic mushrooms.
It's magic mushrooms. Yeah, you can call them magic mushrooms. They are magic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we had a guest actually, it's a while ago. He calls himself 434. I mean, his name is Peter Hedron, right? But he goes by the title 434. You don't ever see him, right? So he was a guest that you just had the number on the screen. But very, very interesting. And he said his turning point in life was psychedelics. And then after he took them, he was able to talk to anything, right? He was in the forest and was communicating to everything in the forest. And it was magical. And that changed his whole life. I mean, but anyway, let's get on to what you do. So with these, what do you call them?
Microdosing. Yeah.
Microdosing.
So microdosing is essentially, it's just a modern word for an very ancient practice. You know, people have been in relationship with plants and mushrooms for tens of thousands of years. It's just we frame it, you know, through our modern lens. And so microdosing is really just kind of a plant dieta or a plant diet. So it's connecting with plant medicine, mushroom medicine in small doses over time so that you are not altered in any way. You know, you're not tripping, you're not hallucinating, it's sub-perceptual. Although many people who start microdosing eventually work up to working at higher doses with psychedelics. Absolutely. But that's where we begin. Right. And I would say the number one, people come for all kinds of reasons, but what I've been seeing in the last year is the number one reason people, even if they can't articulate it, is people are really ready to peel away all of these cultural conditioning narratives that we've grown up with work is hard. Work is something we do for X number of decades, and then we can stop doing it. Work is outside and separate from ourselves. You know, all of these things, or I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm a girl, like all of these things are completely cultural conditioning. And so they're drawn to that voice that's like tells them this, there's something more than this, there's something I'm meant to be doing. And microdosing and plant medicine, it helps you reconnect to that voice inside yourself, that childhood voice that was so clear when you were a kid, that was like, I want to be a spaceman, you know? And when you look at it, you're like, actually, there's, in some ways, my life is kind of like a spaceman. So we all have these threads that are available to us.
Maybe you're spaced out. That's why you
I don't know, Boyan can answer that. But yeah, that's how most people are coming to it. And so it's a really, really, I think it's not a coincidence that nature is kind of reaching out to us at the same time that humans are awakening to this greater possibility that we hold.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, the problem is I can go in the forest and I can see dozens of different types of mushrooms. I wouldn't know a good one from a bad one. I even have them, right, just to tease me, right? I have them grown in the garden. Like if I don't cut the grass for a while.
They are all good.
They're all good.
The dosage that is differentiating. Maybe this is the key, I think.
I just wonder if it is kind of you're always growing up to believe that, I mean, your parents would say, yeah, don't touch those. That's not mushroom, it's fungi. Or it's a fungus, right? Or something. Oh, don't touch that. That could be poisonous. So they've kind of scared you away from them. That you've only gone to buy the mushrooms that you see in the supermarket.
Toadstool.
Sorry?
We were told it's a toadstool, which is poisonous.
Yes, exactly.
In fact, the poisoning from mushrooms, if it happens, it's with a lot of pain, and it's really bad. So this is why. When it happens, this is also why people are really scared, but it's lack of education from one side. Then you can experiment, but you need to know how to do it. Like the most beautiful mushrooms, the one with red and white dots, they're some of the most poisonous one.
Actually, I was watching a program about that the other day, and they said that the red ones aren't poisonous. Again, it's probably dosage, but you know, they're actually very good. Because I mean, if you see
Yes.
a lot of animals actually eat them.
I think it's also a combination of the organisms of different animals producing, let's say, maybe to, I don't know, but it's a good point. It's but this is like what who was saying, that the dosage differentiates the poison from the healing, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, in many languages, especially in ancient languages, the word is actually the same. Medicine and poison is interchangeable, and it's really the same source. Can be a poison or it can be a medicine. It just all depends on the dose and sometimes the intention too. But yeah, the terms like toadstools and things, it's similar to, you know, in the time with, as the church in the time of the Inquisition rose through history, we're still living with a lot of that cultural conditioning and propaganda, if you will, around, you know, witches too. Like witches were actually medicine women and sacred medicine keepers that were called witches and framed as witches to make people fearful and to stay away. And mushrooms, the same thing.
Yeah, so just take me back a little bit. So now I'm just guessing at the moment. So you're at a wild party with some friends and you tried some magic mushrooms, and that's how you got into it.
No,
No?
actually the complete opposite. Although that's a common story. That's I think probably would be the most of the time. No, my experience was very, very different than that. So I grew up not ever having experimented with drugs of any kind. And part of it was just my nature. And part of it was I had a seizure disorder. So when I was 19, I developed grand mal seizures that I had no control over. I would just completely lose consciousness. And they were very severe in my early 20s, very disruptive to my life. And I was in college and trying to study and having this weird condition. And so through my 20s, I was medicated for them. I was tested for everything under the sun to try to find the source of what was causing them. And I had a whole array of doctors, and no one could ever pinpoint. I didn't have epilepsy. I didn't have a tumor. I didn't have any of these physical causes. And even then I had a hunch like there was nothing wrong with me. Like they were looking, I knew they weren't going to find anything. And I was on medication, and finally I got to the point where I can stay on these heavy medications that aren't really working anyway. Or I can come off them and try different lifestyle modalities to try to lessen them over time. And that's what I, against all of my doctor's advice, did probably in my mid-20s. But I continue to have them, not as often, but they were still part of my life. And so I was in the healing arts by now. I was a meditator. I did yoga almost daily. So I could largely control them. But it wasn't until I serendipitously met my collaborator, friend, and person who introduced me to the concept of mushroom practice and microdosing. And of course I had heard of, I was an 80s kid, like with the Reagan era, like just say no to drugs. I had heard of psychedelics and all of the stigma that comes along with psychedelics, but meeting this person, really, it was the first time I had heard them used in a therapeutic sense and in a microdosing capacity, so where you're not going to be tripping.
Yeah, how long ago was this? I mean, just roughly.
Maybe 4 years ago now.
Oh, so
4 years ago. Yep. So, and so the idea of working with mushrooms without losing consciousness or without losing control and being altered was just, as soon as I heard it, that felt really right. And I started practicing. And even 4 years, there really wasn't much out there. You know, there's a handful of books, there were like a handful of podcasts to listen to, but there definitely wasn't any kind of like guidance. And so I started, and I was doing all of my other modalities that I had always practiced for years. And really what became our program was wishing what I wish I would have had when I started, because when you don't know and you're working with these substances, you don't know what's normal. Like, you're experiencing all these things, but you have no concept or container to know, am I the only one that's experiencing this? Like, this is happening, and what is my dosing? Those kind of questions. But I had lots and lots of benefits, but one of the significant one was, as soon as I started microdosing, my seizures stopped, and I have not had one since. And I am just one example of so many in our programs that have had really amazing nervous system healing of all kinds.
So, yeah, I've got a dozen questions to ask you. So, was it the mushrooms or whatever you're doing that cured the seizures and the problems that you had?
Do I think the mushrooms cured them? Yes.
Cured them, yes.
Yes, I do.
Right.
I do.
And tell me, because you mentioned earlier that you had never experienced taking any sort of drugs. You didn't smoke cannabis or anything. You didn't do anything. You're that clean girl, right? The girl next door kind of thing. And so what was your first experience like? Because you must have been quite nervous. You must have thought, well, I've never done anything like this, and now I'm going to do something that, is kind of taboo, and I'm going to give it a go. I mean, did you not ask questions like, how much do I take? If I have too much, what will be the effect? I mean, tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my friend that had introduced me to the idea gave me general guidance onto how to start, how much to take, and it's so subtle and it's so powerful at the same time. So while I started to feel benefits almost immediately within the first couple of days, the benefits aren't, again, you're not tripping, you're not altered. I know for most people, they notice the cognitive benefits come first in most people, just the general, you're just clearer, sharper, your energy's more sustained, your senses are all a little brighter and clearer, from your eyesight to your sense of taste to your sense of smell. Everything is just kind of like, life is just dialed up a little bit, but not in any kind of overwhelming sense, but a really like, this is how it is. This is how it can be, and this is how it should be.
So a bit like all your senses are actually working, and you get to feel what they really are now. I mean, senses are being kind of, brought to life, and everything is functioning how it should. But could you, if you overdosed or you took one too many or whatever, what could be the effect of that?
Typically if people are taking, a microdosing range, there's a general range, but it varies wildly from person to person. And if you take slightly too much, most of the time people just feel a little spaced out, or fatigue is that's a sign that you dial down. But inside our community, we tend to start low and then go up as needed. So we really haven't seen much of that, but just generally out in the world, you would start to feel physical effects, or distorted.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. So would you go into the forest or into nature to do that? Because doing it in the city, I guess you don't want to hear car horns like louder and the noise of cars even more deafening. You'd rather go out into nature, and then kind of nature comes alive, and you can actually sense it much better.
Yes, especially if you're working at a higher dose in a journey experience. I think, yes, being in a natural setting is far more suitable and pleasant if you're going to do a journey dose of mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd much rather be talking to the plants than talking to your ceiling,
Or sometimes even better than the
but
neighbor.
yes. But microdosing, it's subtle enough that the whole point is to be able to incorporate it into your daily life. So you're not needing to go outside of your life and step outside of yourself. It's enables you to integrate into your day-to-day life, into your work, into your love, into your relationships, into your parenting in a real sustained way.
So typically, feel free, audience, to jump in as well and ask questions, right? So, and feel free to ask the audience questions as well. I know Beth she's written in something in the chat, so I'd rather she said that, right? But we'll come to that in a minute. So when you said you go on a journey, typically how long is that? And would you do alone, or would you make sure that there's someone with you, at least for the first time?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. That comes up a lot. So for some reason, this is part of our Western mindset, I think, is our modern mindset is we're so impatient with everything. Like we want to go to the extreme right away. Like we just want it. We want it next weekend. And we don't really think about the preparation. And I think a big part of the reason why I have had such a profound experience is because I had a 27-year preparation process. Now, not everybody's going to take 27 years before you do a journey, but the more you have contemplative practices and meditate and do yoga and do some personal work or some shadow work preceding your journey is going to be that much more profound, positive, and much more able to integrate it in a positive way into your life. If you just have done nothing and you rush to a journey experience next weekend. But for whatever reason in our culture, our modern culture, we focus on the journey. We don't focus on the preparation. So I often use the analogy of meditation because everybody's familiar with that. Like if you've never, ever meditated before in your life and you sign up for like a 10-day silent meditation retreat, that retreat is going to be really fucking hard. Like you're just going to get kicked in so many directions. And you wouldn't even do that. Like you would be crazy to do that. But for some reason we do that with psychedelics, and then we get disappointed when nothing happens, or we have a kind of harrowing and terror. So mushrooms, ayahuasca, whatever medicine you choose is going to show you truth. And so the more preparation you do to ready and prepare yourself to receive, it's going to be. So I love, and my approach with people is to start them with microdosing in an ideal world and prepare yourself. And it doesn't have to be long, like even if it's just 3 or 4 months at a minimum, to really clear and clean your body, get yourself spiritually in aligned and in the right place, and prepare yourself.
Right. I'm just going to pause you there a minute. I'm just going to ask a question to the audience. Has anyone microdosed before here? Anyone here that's tried? Oh, well, right, 2. Ro, not you?
Not at all, no.
Right. And who, having heard what we've heard, would be willing to give it a go? All right, you got.
I'd maybe give it a go, but thing is, what's the end point of it? If I don't, if I don't need healing, or I don't think I need healing, what would be the point of trying it?
Why do people come? Yeah, all different reasons. So people come for physical healing, mental health reasons, emotional balance, and spiritual development, as well as nature connection. So we see all people coming for all of those reasons. And the beauty is, even if you just come for one, you're going to get them all over time. And there really isn't an end goal. That's another way this is so different than kind of the Western medicine mindset of I get it, I got it, and it's done. Like when you're working with plant medicine, it's an evolution and it's a lifelong journey that never ever ends. It's not that you're constantly microdosing or you're doing journey after journey after journey, but as you work with it, your life and your spirit will constantly unfold. But it's interesting. Lately, we've had a lot of people who work with food coming. And I too don't think that's a coincidence either. Like a lot of people, Ro, like you are leaving corporate employ and they're really drawn to work with nutrition and food and our connection with the earth in that way too. So we have enough people in our program now. I love looking at the backgrounds. From nature's perspective, if nature was kind of the puppeteer above us, drawing people to practice and bringing people together for a reason, it's always really fascinating to see. It's like, oh, okay, I see the strategy here. Like that makes total sense.
Okay. Okay. Let me just bring Beth in. If your connection stays up, you wrote a message in the chat, and maybe you can just share that message now.
Sure. It's a little bit off of what we're talking about at the moment, but earlier when we were talking about mushrooms, I've had a lot of internet connectivity issues. So I had my video off because it helps, but I was still getting kicked off every once in a while and just getting right back in. So I didn't miss a lot, but I couldn't speak up when I wanted to because I might get kicked back out again. So one time I have this crazy uncle and he's a hippie to the nth degree. Like he's a real hippie. Like at one time we would go visit him and he was living in a school bus with his daughter, and they transformed it into a little home, but they had no electricity, no plumbing, no nothing. And that's pretty typical. I think he lives in Nicaragua at the moment, just because that's where he lives now. And he's in his 70s, but he's still like, he helps them with farming skills and stuff like that. And so he was up in the United States. I was just out of college, so this is a long time ago. And he sees that our lawn is full of mushrooms and he starts picking them and saying he's going to cook them for dinner. And my mom's like, what? Those are poisonous. And he goes, no, I know how to tell. These are not poisonous. And we're like, he does know a lot about farming and stuff, but he's also kind of crazy. So we're like not sure whether to trust him. And he starts cooking them up, just puts a little olive oil in the pan, starts cooking them up. And he sits down, he starts eating them. I think my mom had made rice and some other stuff. So he just put it all in a bowl, starts eating it. And he's like, don't you guys want some? My mom's like, I'm just not sure about those, Eric. And I'm like, he's eating it. So it's not like he's going to keel over and die. He's very sure that these things are okay. So if he's eating it, I'll have some too. Why not? And I put some in my bowl and my mom's looking at me like, are you crazy? And he and I are just sitting there eating them and nothing ever happened to me, obviously. They were really tasty too. They were similar to portobello, but kind of milder. So I just wanted to share that story. And about microdosing, I have not microdosed those kind of things, but whenever I go to the doctor and they say they're going to start me on a low dose, I'm like, start me on a lower dose. Because I had an experience when I was in my 20s. I was suffering from depression and I didn't even realize it. I just thought I was really overwhelmed and what I was feeling was normal because I've been feeling that way since I was about 12. And it finally came to a head when I was a first-year teacher and I was engaged to be married and I was planning my wedding and all this stuff came down on me. And I just thought I was just super overwhelmed. And they're like, no, you have pretty serious depression. So we're going to put you on a medication and we'll start you on a low dose. And I just trusted them and I took it. And I was like over the moon happy. It was way too much, but one of my kids suffered depression too, and it's like the normal low dose that they put you on. And I told them, give him half of that. Because they should have given me half or a quarter of what they gave me. Because like they said it'll take a few weeks, be patient. In 2 days, I was like, like everything I did, I was really high on that stuff, and it's not good. So then now I tell my doctors I'm very sensitive to medication. So I love your approach because I think with everything I work with kids, and with everything, I start really slow because the parents usually come to me. He won't write anything. He won't. And I start, and I'm like, what's your favorite letter? Can you write one letter for me? And they're like, he really loved you. He wants you to come again. And I'm like, that's because I don't. You can overdo anything. And when someone's already like close to it, you never want to pour and rain down a bunch of stuff on them. And so there's a lot to be said for just starting small. So I really love your approach. And that's all I want to say. So if I get cut off, I'm okay.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, so well said. I mean, we're so conditioned to look outside of ourselves for things, when a big part of healing especially is sometimes removing things. It's like removing all the layers that exist between ourselves and ourselves, because we have everything we need. And microdosing, when you're working with earth medicines and plant medicines, the big difference between them to me and pharmaceutical medications is they're reconnecting you to you. They're not altering you. So that's the big difference. Like when you put them down and start microdosing, like I'll go months and months now without microdosing, but I don't worry that my seizures are going to come back. Versus pharmaceutical medications, the whole concept is you need to keep taking them because it is them altering you. They are physically, literally altering you and your brain chemistry. So a big part of our approach is trying to get them out of the drug category, because again, that's been the cultural narrative of to call psychedelics and plant medicines drugs, when it doesn't really do them justice to categorize them in this way.
Yeah, I think they've deliberately been put in that category because the big pharma aren't going to make any money on this if you can have natural products.
So is it regulated anyway, or if at all, or what's the legality or whatever it's behind?
Yeah, in most of the United States right now, it's still illegal and Schedule 1. Unfortunately, it was placed on Schedule 1 largely due to politics. And not surprisingly, in the Nixon era, there was a lot of psychedelic research underway in the 50s and 60s. And it was really the Nixon administration trying to control both the African-American population and the hippies, right? So let's make cannabis and psychedelics illegal. And even though neither substance qualifies for all the Schedule 1 regulations, like to be a Schedule 1 drug, it needs to be addictive, habit forming, it needs to cause death or harm. And these plant medicines don't qualify for any of those qualities, yet they were still placed on Schedule 1. Yeah. So once they're placed there, it's harder to change those laws and undo what was done for entirely political reasons in the 60s. So now there's a decriminalization movement happening all over the United States, where individual cities and towns and states are one by one on a grassroots level choosing to decriminalize and legalize. Right now, Oregon is the only state that has voted to legalize psychedelics, but there's many, many, many towns. Colorado just voted to decriminalize statewide, and fingers crossed California will do so next year, we're hoping.
Right. And it's quite ironic what you said, because tobacco, right, should be up there as a killer drug and addictive, and all the things that you said there, it can't be, but tobacco is, and the smoking industry gets away with it. So I'd rather be eating mushrooms every day than smoking 20 cigarettes.
Yes. Yes.
But anyway, so
it's all about money, isn't it? And it's the same with cannabis, which was it was vilified in the 30s, and it was all about DuPont and competing with it was actually the cannabis material, hemp material was competing with DuPont. And so they turned it into Mary Jane, and then marijuana to turn it into like Spanish, to make it as if it's really horrible drug type thing.
Yes, thank you, Ro. That's exactly what's going to happen ultimately. I mean, I hate to say that, but just being real and watching the lessons learned from cannabis and other natural medicines is, for a long time, something is fringe and weird. And so it's easy enough to just ridicule it or dismiss it and say science hasn't proven this, it's just, and that's almost preferable to then, once enough people, it gains credibility in a mass way, which is happening as we speak. Then pharma and corporate's like, there's gold to be had here. So let's move from ridiculing it to creating and fomenting fear around it. So that's the next wave, is going to be gatekeeping, and you can't do this, but we can do this, and we will keep you safe, and we'll create a whole bunch of layers and systems so that we can profit from what is freely available all over the world.
Exactly.
It's the same at the moment with ivermectin and chlorine dioxide, isn't it?
I'm not familiar with pharmaceuticals as much. No.
These aren't, well, they're not really pharmaceuticals. They're drugs that have been around for 70 odd years, but because they actually cure COVID, they've been hidden for the last 3 years and vilified.
Exactly. They said, we'll come to Beth in a minute. They said that ivermectin was a horse medicine, and because it can be used with horses and it helps them, right? It was deemed as the horse medicine and ridiculed, but it is actually very good for humans as well. And it particularly in India, where they used it, millions of people got over COVID just by using ivermectin. But it was banned and ridiculed and blacklisted and taken off the shelves in the rest of the world. But anyway, Beth, you have a question.
I was going to say, while marijuana and these other things are being banned in some places, and obviously mushrooms are illegal and all that, my son, I mentioned he had depression. They put him on depression medication immediately when he was 9, and convinced me that this was what had to be done. And then later he had behavior problems, and they put him on heavy duty, antipsychotic meds. And then when I realized they were doing nothing and wanted him off of it, they said, the only thing we can do is raise his dose, because the way he's behaving, this is what you have to do. And my husband's sitting there going, we need to do this. We need to do this. So of course, everyone in the room is looking at me like I'm the oddball, and then, a few years on, he's in high school and he's behaving even worse. So raising the dose. And then when I finally get enough information, and I'm like, this drug has done nothing for him in years, and all they've done is amp up the dose. And I'm talking to other moms online and support groups and stuff, and they're saying you never want to go higher than 10 milligrams. And from my point of view, it never did anything for my son. And I'm thinking it never did anything for my son either. And they've got him on 30. And these other moms are complaining about 4, 8, 10. And I told them, my son's on 30. And they're like, that's unheard of. You got to get him off of it. And I had him go in by himself over 18 and say, I don't want to be on this anymore. And they said, too bad, you need to be on it. And so what he did is he went home and he just stopped taking it cold turkey. And I told him, don't do that. I can help you. I can give you an idea of how to go off it, because I've gone off medications before. But he was so angry at these people that he just stopped taking all his meds cold turkey. His antidepressant and he went down. But he just called me every day and I just talked him out of it. He's like, don't worry, Mom, I will never, ever kill myself. I know I feel bad, but I know it's going to go away. And in 2 weeks, he was fine. No more depression. He has all this ambition now. I'm so angry that they kept him on drugs from age 9 to age 20. And meanwhile, they're saying, if he was, taking some microdose of mushrooms, they would arrest him. I mean, it's all political and everything. So that was my negative comment. My positive comment is when you were talking about mindfulness. Oh my gosh, I did that. And just like you said, I didn't run off to some week-long retreat. I took a little class outpatient. You go once a week and they walk you through like a 15-minute mindfulness thing. And the guy has a soothing voice and he just says, you know, this is what I want you to do. Thoughts will come in, just say goodbye thought and just let it float away. Go back to concentrating on your breathing. Thoughts will come in. Just don't judge yourself. Just say, oops, I'm not supposed to be thinking that. See you later, thought. And like, he just made it very non-judgmental. Lights were low, but there was no music, no anything. Because he goes, it's okay if you do that at home, but the problem is if you get used to it, then you can't do this anywhere. So I prefer that you learn to do it just any chair, just so you can go into the bathroom and sit in a stall. You can do it in your office cubicle. And oh my gosh, that's been life-changing because I tend to be high anxiety and I can do it in a second. I can just tell myself, whoa, you're thinking the wrong way. Everything's going to be okay. The world is not going to end because of this. And I'm done. Like, it's better to do a 15-minute, but if I'm in a situation and I can't stop and go somewhere, I can get myself, I used to be like the worst. I still talk like, but I used to be the worst. Like all these negative things were running through my head all the time, like back in my 20s, and they just put me on that medicine. They didn't even try it. And I could have changed my thinking and been fine. And so now I'm working with a pharmacist because I'm still on a couple meds and like we're going off of them and they keep checking in with me. How are you? Do you feel a difference? I was taking 8 pills a day of this one thing and I'm going to go off of it on December 31st. And it's just, you know, it's true. Like the studies even show that these medications don't really do anything. It's all about what's in your mind and how you're thinking. Exactly. And talk therapy works just as well as medication. So, but they still want to peddle it because it's really expensive.
You know, one of the side effects of coming off these drugs is fantasizing about suicide, and I've actually lost a couple of people to that. You know, that they don't tell you that that's one of the side effects. That's why they're checking in with me. Yeah, you always have to have somebody close that you can contact and that's contacting you and make sure. But I haven't had the slightest, I can't tell any difference at all. I can't believe I was taking 8 pills a day of this just a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Anyway.
And you see with my son, like he had me, right? He would feel so lousy, like he could hardly bear it, but he would just reach out to me and say, I'm feeling that thing. And you could tell he's crying, like, you know, and I'm like, if you need to come over here, whatever you need me to come over there, he's 15 minutes away. We're in the same city. So, you know, he didn't have his therapist because he can't stand those people. They're not on his side. And, but he had me and, you know, a couple of days he came over and he just cried on my shoulder, but he just needed to be in the room with a real human to like get back to the sense of reality that this is what life is going to be when he comes out of it. He's still going to have me. We're going to want to go do things. It's not worth it to kill himself because this will be over. And I kept telling him, I've been where you are right now. It will be over. You just have to stick it out. And he made it. And now he's doing great. So.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. I hear that over and over, that story over and over again. And it's so heartbreaking. So many young people grew up, you know, in Prozac Nation, right? Where we didn't, most of us here, like it wasn't part of our childhood. It wasn't there yet. But I talk to so many young people and they've been medicated through most of their childhood for just life stuff. You know, when they tell me their stories, they're like, well, you know, I got my license at 16 and I got an offender bender and I felt sad about it. So I was put on a drug. Or my girlfriend broke up with me and I felt sad. I was put on a drug. And it's like, they're not being taught to do human, you know, that's life. You know, we have disappointments, we have grief, we have sadness. That's part of our beautiful humanity. And medicating it and medicating, we're doing such a disservice to them by medicating them, but also we're doing them a disservice by not teaching them the resiliency and emotional development of life skills that are going to take them into a very uncertain future that they're stepping into. So thank you for speaking to that. Also, I work with a lot of people, probably about half of the people who apply to work with me at this point are on at least one pharmaceutical drug. And so they're tapering at the same time that they're beginning mushroom practice. And mushroom practice can really help soften some of the side effects and withdrawal symptoms, but it is harrowing. it is harrowing to watch and witness somebody who has been on antidepressants for 20, 30 years coming off of them. And like you said, it's just a marketing machine. That's what it has always been about. And a lot of the drugs that we have that are common household names, antidepressants, were never tested, studied, designed for use more than for 2 years. And yet, how many people go on to antidepressants with a plan to come off of them? You know, most people, I hear your son's story over and over again, where when someone advocates for themselves and say, okay, well, I want to come off of these things, what's the game plan? Can you support me in doing so? No.
No, there's too much money involved. I mean, big pharma money. How do you think farmers are so rich? And doctors as well. Every prescription is cash flow. Anyway, we could digress and talk about that in more detail in something else. But the other thing, Laszlo, you going? Okay, thanks, Laszlo.
Thank you.
Right. The other thing is, I mean, children. I mean, I have 3 small children under the age of 9, like, as I said, and I would say that there must be more than 50% of the kids in each of the classes that they're in that have been diagnosed with some sort of autism, Asperger's, or something. And yeah, I beg to differ. And I think a lot of it's to do with, well, many, many other things, but the quality of the food and society in general, the negativity, the mindset, the educational programs. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm surprised that is not 100% of the kids because you're kind of traumatized going to school. I'm not saying all schools are bad, and I'm not saying all education is bad, but it definitely needs to be revamped and causing problems. But anyway, we could talk about magic mushrooms and psychedelics and micro whatever forever. Right.
There is a really strong link, and there's quite a few doctors between the gut flora and autism. And you know, there's a Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride who's reversed her managing her son's autism with real food. Because a lot of the problems come from, like, their gut bacteria. They've got gut dysbiosis from a very young age, maybe from formula things. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
I think what we need to do is set up another event, actually, and do a panel discussion, right, around kind of nutritional values of food, supplements, about basically everything that we're kind of discussing, but in a bit more detail, because this is more about your journey, not to really go into the depth about mushrooms and stuff, although it fascinates the hell out of me. So
they're kind of the same. Yeah, they're kind of the same.
I want to also know about, I mean, we can go on all night. I know, I mean, if we want to keep to the time, we've only got a few minutes left. Maybe just touch on, you mentioned your other business as well. So does that get the same enthusiasm?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, my other business is a healing artist platform. And so when I was coming up, you know, a lot of the business lessons I learned were, you know, making a lot of mistakes and learning through experience. And so really, I didn't know business coaching was a thing. And then even when I became a business, I didn't think my business justified having a coach or professional development. Like, that's very normal when you come up in corporate. Professional development is a thing, but for entrepreneurs and healing artists in particular, you don't know where to look or to have a coach and support of people who have been there before you. So that was kind of the inspiration around this platform. And so it's healing artists of all different backgrounds. We have a lot of plant medicine people, but we have body workers and nutritionists and hypnotherapists. It's all people who are working toward the health and wellness of society, to give them coaching and strategy and business support and skills. So how to take this passion and put it and create a sustainable business out of it.
I love it.
Mm.
I really love it, and I'm just concerned about time. But I've dropped the links in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Mhm.
I don't know if I had to put both in there. I'll have to check. But anyway,
I'm super easy to find online. Yeah.
I put your LinkedIn in there and the microdoses one in there. I just need to dig out. I think I've got the other one here, so I'll just put those in there as well. But I'll make them available. I mean, when we kind of top and tail this, we add an intro and an outro and put it on YouTube, and all the details are in there anyway. So have you got, just kind of wrapping up now, although, I mean, I love the conversation and I could talk for hours, but I mean, we kind of need to wrap it up now. Any questions, anything else you want to ask the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I have time for one more question or one more topic if anybody has.
Oh, we have time.
I have something.
Yeah, I have time for one more. I have a client coming up, but yeah, I have time for one more.
Okay. How we can help you in your business?
Oh, that's very thoughtful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just sharing the word is one of the most powerful ways. I think healing, we have to overcome so much of the corporate machine and marketing. You turn on the television, and at least here in the United States, it's just nonstop pharmaceutical ads. You can't escape it. All of the conditioning and the programming. And so really, I think the future of healing is this. It's like getting people in the room together and sharing our stories and going, I did this thing and I know this person and this is working for me. This is working for my son, is one of the most powerful ways we can empower ourselves and empower each other.
Exactly. Hence the reason why when we have these kind of shows and we get to know the person, the person behind the business, then we can take it kind of to another level and think, well, how can we complement that and make an event that is really going to attract more people and be something meaningful that people can get involved in and join a program or something. So tell us, I mean, to learn more about your work, how do you do that? Do you do it one-to-one, one-to-many in a group? Do you do it online, offline, a combination? Tell us.
All the above. Yeah. So I have different tiers to make it accessible to the most number of people. So at our website, Microdosing for Healing, we have many free resources and a free 101 workshop that answers all of introductory questions. What is it? Who is it for? And then we have group programs that have different levels of support. And then I do one-on-one work as well. Most of it's virtually. We have our first international folks recently, but most of it right now is within the United States. Okay. And then for sourcing, we advocate and have a cultivation partner. So we don't recommend, until you achieve a certain status of expert, we don't recommend foraging off in your yard. Not everybody has a hippie uncle. If you have a hippie uncle who knows what they're doing, that's fine. But we counsel and coach and teach people how to cultivate your own mushrooms at home, so that it's safe, it's accessible, you know what you're doing, and you have control over your medicines.
Okay, so I could, once I've learned how to do it, go and find my own mushrooms and cultivate them and prepare them myself.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I just need to learn how. Right. Okay. So we're just kind of wrapping up. So in your business now, you mentioned so you work in a team. Is it your team? Is it a virtual team? Is it other experts in their field and you come together, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's my platform, but it's very, very collaborative within it. So within the program, a lot of the people that you quote unquote meet inside the program are people who aren't necessarily as public about their work outside of the container of the course. So that's increasingly changing, but definitely 2 years ago when I started, a lot of them were semi-private about this side of their work. So from everything from doctors to pharmacists to journey guides to medicine makers, cultivators, they bring their skills. And then I have 2 other coaches too, who coach calls and hold space for people.
Right. And you have any European clients?
No. I have colleagues who kind of do microdosing coaching semi-similarly all over the world. So we
Right.
tend to
And
refer to each other. Mhm.
you're looking for a great team in Europe, aren't you, that you can team up with?
Yes. Yes. And I have many friends in Costa Rica also. That's a really beautiful place to be. And there's some really beautiful medicine people
Are you going?
in Costa Rica. I am not, but I know Andra is there.
Yeah.
I will wait for you there.
Yeah, we'll all meet there with your mushrooms. Right?
Yeah, James, Ro, and you, and we're gonna have a mushroom party.
Yeah. No,
And you're
I think
invited.
no, I think kind of things like this stimulate interest and just coming together for an hour or so conversation, you're meeting other people that have a passion and desire for helping. And to me, it's about helping humanity. I mean, I say there's two fundamental reasons three reasons why we're here. First of all, it's to learn. And the second one is to serve humanity and preserve humanity, period. It's not about how big your car is and how many holidays you have. And I mean, it's nice to have these things, but ultimately we're here to serve one another. And if we can harness our skills and we can help one another and we can bring joy and happiness and well-being, then we've achieved our goals. And like coming together like this, the retreat is fantastic. I'd love to do that. I'd love to come and visit Casey and do some of your work. Ro has got some fantastic programs as well. And I don't know Michael yet, but I'm sure he's got something interesting. And Boyan, I mean, all of us. So coming together just makes it possible. But anyway, Casey, since it is your show and you were our 108th guest, our last one for the year, right? We now take a break and then we come back with some more exciting guests for next year. So we will put your profile and everything also on the website and links to your information. And yeah, have you got anything closing that you want to leave us with?
No, just gratitude for taking time to be here. It's a really busy time of year. So thank you all for making time to be here and just for having interest in this subject.
Right.
It's through people sharing that these medicines are going to become more available to people. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Thank you. So I encourage everyone to network and connect. I typically use LinkedIn and mainly that's where I find my guests as well. So it's a great way to find people, although we encourage them to come across to our platform and then they can share their services, their story, the recording, and everything else. So on that note, thank you, Casey, for being our 108th guest. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned something and you've got me excited now. I'm going to go in the forest now and find some mushrooms. Right. You'll see me coming back with a bag of mushrooms and my wife will go crazy and she'll think, what are you doing with those?
Wrong time of year, James.
Sorry?
Wrong time of year.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Although it's got 12 degrees today, so
yeah,
maybe the mushrooms will come back out. I don't know. But you can grow them in your home, can't you? If it's a dark place in your basement. Right, okay, new project. Okay. All right, so I wish everyone, actually, because we're 2 days away from Christmas, so I wish everyone a fantastic Christmas and a great start to the new year. And hopefully we'll start meeting people in person in the new year as well. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
A great holiday. Merry Christmas,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was another featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact. If you'd like to be our next featured guest or learn how James Moffat can help you leverage on the art and power of interactive storytelling for your business, reach out and schedule a call now.